more of them. And they're getting stronger. We're fighting them off. To give us a clear shot. Come on. Number 3. Why are we doing this? What do you mean? Why are we walking to North Baltimore? What purpose is this supposed to serve? Why did Amish Dumbledore want us to do this? Because that's what you do in an epic story. Now come on. It's a review. Why does it need to be epic? Why aren't Hatter and I just sitting in front of our respective backgrounds? We don't have time for this. It's like the musical all over again. Reg, and the film noir. It's like the genres are taking over the reviews. You know, this is my first review. It's kind of overwhelming. Are they always like this? Not generally. And probably not again. Never thought I'd die fighting side by side with, well, you. What about side by side with a friend? I can do that. Need a hand? I'm a traitor like you? No, thanks. Not a traitor, Hatter. I just go where I'm needed. Right now, you need me more than he does. What are they saying? They're saying we haven't considered the land that Tolkien created. Well, why haven't we? It's a long review. We hadn't gotten to it yet. Well, why not do it now? Very well, number 1. Consider the battle for Middle-earth begun. For Reg. Reg, round 8 has started. Well, that one's a no-brainer, isn't it? What do you mean? Middle-earth? Which one did it better? I don't know, I thought the movie handled things pretty well. Oh, did they now? Then pray, Reg, explain it to me. You sent the words to distract them from you. Just as they sent you on this pointless journey to distract me from you. Oh, you didn't know? They want so badly to protect you, Reg. They know how susceptible you are to bias. In a way, I'm more of a match for you than Hatter is. We're both driven by passion. It's what gives us our power. So tell me, Reg, why is this round a no-brainer? Why don't you go first? Why isn't it? The movie does Middle-earth pretty well. The settings are many and varied, and you definitely get a sense of the vastness of the world. The world seems ancient, and they reinforce this perception with the little stories and songs and histories that they do include in the movies. There aren't as many as there are in the book, to be sure, but there are enough to establish the atmosphere and not so much as to distract from the story. Is that really all you got? Boy, did you ever pick the wrong round to pick a fight. The Lord of the Rings is Middle-earth. It's basically why the book was written, to expand upon the world that we'd heard about in The Hobbit. It's vast and rich and so incredibly detailed that it seems like a real world lost to history, and now it exists only in legend. We learn so much about the men, the dwarves, the elves, the hobbits, the ents. Hell, even if you don't bother with the prologue and the appendices, you still get so much information about this world. And it's all brilliantly done. I mean, come on, the man even invented languages, for crying out loud. And they do serve a purpose to the actual story, even when things are at their darkest, even when all hope seems lost. They still have their songs and their stories to fall back on. They sing and tell their stories even when things seem completely hopeless and they're only acting out of desperation. It says that there are some things that evil cannot touch. Even if Sauron takes over all of Middle-earth, he still cannot take away who they are and those songs and stories that define them. So I'm sorry, Mr. White Hoodie Guy. Evil Haberdasher. Really? Well, anyway, you don't get this round. You don't get this review. And you don't get me. Number 3. I've got this troll taken care of. Go finish the review! You're not very nice. Your relationship with grammar and syntax is negligible at best. I can't understand a word you were saying. Ed, that's 2! I'm up to 19. Oh, you haven't seen my power of incredible apathy. Look, they're changing what they're saying. Reg has completed round 8. Hatter, prepare yourself. I see it. All right, let's get ready for this. No more messing around. It's time to look at the deciding round. Story. Well, I'm here.
Look at it. Hatter is not here. You could declare Book the winner, and no one would know. Except the audience. No one in the audience would care. They wouldn't think twice if Book was declared the winner. He can get away with it. But is the book really better? Of course Book is better, stupid! It's the story that inspired most modern fantasy! It's the story that people still read every year! It's the story that the success of the movies owes everything to! And at what point do we stop genuflecting at the book and admit that it has flaws? No flaws! It is perfect! It is flawless! It is precious! No, it isn't! Isn't! You stupid little! You've let people the culture around and brought him under such
What's happening? They're arguing amongst themselves. Reg has turned the final round over to them, and they're destroying each other. I guess they did it. This isn't over. The forces of reason may have won this battle, but sooner or later, the forces of unreason are going to rally and come back. They won't accept the tie. Book or movie has to come out on top, that is the way of it. But we must not lose our heads. We can't allow the ways of the evil haberdasher to influence us. We can't allow passion to drive our thinking. That'll lead to destruction, as surely as it led the trolls to destruction. Be ready. Oh, sorry, that's me. Yeah. Right. It's the situation back at the apartment. The clones. About damn time. Let's go. Hey, where you been? You missed my big speech in there. Oh, I'm just walking back and thought I'd like a haircut. Now doesn't that just figure? You get done doing the review of your life, and what do? You get a haircut. Guess that means I'll have to get one too. You know, it kind of bugs me a little bit. What, that we always have to have the same hair? I don't know, it's just a thing.
No, Hatter, I'm talking about the review.
Oh, what do you mean?
Well, the last round, we never actually finished it. What do you think of the story?
I'll be honest with you, Reg. When I think of Lord of the Rings, I think of a quote by some famous sculptor whose name I can't remember right now, but he said that when he was making a sculpture and he had the block of wood or stone or whatever in front of him, he would look at the raw material and he would see what he was about to sculpt within the raw material, and then he would just chip away the extra bits. Now, the book contains a lot of stuff, and there is a story, and a good one within it, but it's surrounded by all of this stuff, description, and details about the history and the land and so on. It feels like the sculptor wasn't quite finished with the statue yet, like there were still some extra bits that he could have knocked away to find the story. I don't know though. I kind of got the feeling reading the book that everything had a weight to it. Everything had a purpose, even if it didn't seem like it, and even if it wasn't directly relevant to the story itself. I already talked in Round 8 about how the songs and the stories have their place and help to move the story along. The story is actually very focused on the place of stories in general and how storytelling works and why we need it. One of my favorite moments in the book is when Sam and Frodo are just talking about how people are going to remember them and what stories they're going to tell about them. It's a great commentary on storytelling in general, and it's not necessary for the plot per se, but it's not entirely pointless. And honestly, it's part of what makes Lord of the Rings Lord of the Rings. It adds to the atmosphere of it. It makes it seem more like an actual series of events that have just been lost to history. So you think of those extra story bits as just extra bits of rock that need to be chipped off in order to make the statue look better, but to me it's more akin to cutting off the statue's hand. Does the statue need the hand? No, you can still tell what it is without it, but the hand actually does have a point, because most people have hands. We may be in danger of overextending the statue metaphor. It's a simile, actually. Whatever. Hey, number 3. Oh. Well, everyone got out okay? Alright, thanks. What's up? Reg, do you remember our apartment? Sure, what kind of a... What do you mean, remember? You know, the movies didn't just make cuts, though. Reg. They made additions and changes too, even if you're watching the extended versions of the stories. We've already talked about a bunch of them, like Sam leaving Frodo and Arwen appearing to carry Frodo to Rivendell. It would take too long to go through every single one of them, of course, but suffice to say some of them work and some of them don't. For example, there's Aragorn falling off the cliff in one of the battles in Two Towers and having to find his way back to Helm's Deep, a scene that I frankly don't understand at all. Also, there's the reforging of the Sword of Isildur. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sorry if I'm not. In the book, they reforged this sword even before the Fellowship left Rivendell, but in the movie, it's not done until Arwen insists to her father that it needs to be done, honestly making it a much bigger deal in the movie than it is in the book. Why? Honestly, it just feels like they're trying to create more dramatic tension, that and give the character of Arwen something to do. I mean, say what you will about the superfluous scenes in the book, but at least they all have purpose. The superfluous scenes in the movies don't always seem to. Well, I think it goes back to it being just too easy in the book to get everyone together to fight. In the movie, Aragorn really has to prove himself to the elves. He has to show that he's a leader, and the elves have to find it within themselves to put aside their differences with man and fight alongside him in the battle. And I do like that the movies explore a lot of things that the book didn't. Like, we learn a lot more about Aragorn and the insecurities that he feels in being a leader. We also learn more about the elves, Elrond and Arwen in particular, and the idea of an immortal being marrying a mortal man, knowing that she will eventually lose him. And in general, there's this whole feeling that this is the end of the age of the elves and the beginning of the age of man, and the movie really shows us the elves' reaction to this. I also like that Éowyn's storyline is given a lot more prominence, as well as Merry's and Pippin's, which is especially nice given the whole theme of people being underestimated. And there are a lot of really great moments between characters that you don't really get in the book. I don't know if it was just the language or what, but I never got the feeling that the characters connected in the book like they did in the movies. I didn't get a sense of the relationships between these characters, positive or negative, which is really what a lot of this story hinges on. Should talk about the scouring. Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, here's the thing with the scouring of the Shire scene, and really the whole last third of Return of the King. All of the story is building up to the destruction of the ring and the defeat of Sauron, right? Well, all that happens, and the book still has about 100 pages worth of loose ends to tie up, of which the Scouring of the Shire is the biggest one. Saruman and Grima Wormtongue escape and make their way to the Shire and essentially take over, making huge changes to the way that things are done there, pretty much the same way that Saruman did with Isengard. Our four hobbits come home and discover all this, but having been on all these adventures, they're having none of it, and so they successfully raise up a hobbit rebellion, which is able to take back the Shire and kill Saruman. Well, not really kill him, but he's killed in the process. The movie cuts this scene entirely, having Saruman died in an extended version scene in Return of the King, and having our four hobbits return home where nothing seems to have changed. Fans raise an almighty uproar over the elimination of this scene, and I can understand why they did, but I can also understand why Peter Jackson chose to cut it. And when I say cut, I mean Peter Jackson never had any intention of doing the Scouring of the Shire. Even in the extended version, there is no Scouring of the Shire. After all the hoopla of destroying the ring and saving Middle-earth, the story is pretty much over. I mean, as it was, the movie had, 8 or 9 different places where it felt like it should have ended, but that's nothing compared to how the book handled the ending. And it worked for the book, but it would have severely disrupted the flow of the movie. And honestly, I kind of like the idea that these four hobbits went off on this huge grand adventure, saved Middle-earth and everything, and no one back home has any idea. But the book side of it, the fact that no one in Middle-earth was untouched by Sauron's influence, also works really well. And when you think about it, for as realistic as this book's trying to be, there would be a lot of loose ends to tie up. It wouldn't be nearly as clear-cut an ending as it was in the movie. There would be loose ends, stragglers, and a lot of cleaning up to do. I also really like the symbolism of the War of the Ring literally ending on Frodo's doorstep. And I think what the Scouring of the Shire scene really does well is put a period on the story of the hobbits. Not only does it illustrate how far our four hobbits have come since the beginning of the story, but it also just once again shows us the toughness and resiliency of hobbits in general. All they need is a little incentive and they fight back and rebuild what they hold dear. And really, you still get that sense in the book that no one really knows what they went out and did. I mean, why would they? For all they know, these four hobbits just went off on this harebrained adventure and died. And when you come right down to it, it's just a really, really good sequence. It's an exceptionally fine piece of writing, and it's one of my favorite parts of the book. Fair enough. So are we done yet? Not quite. There's room for a bit more. So why did we come back here? Symbolism. This is where the review is meant to end, after all. Right. So, hang on. Are we in HD? I think we are. Right in the middle of the review, too. Huh. We have been doing this review for a while. So, ultimately, it boils down to what story each version is trying to tell. The book focuses on the history of the land, its people, the events that happen, and the incredible detail of the world that Tolkien created. It also focuses on culture, introducing songs, stories, and languages, and illustrating the importance that these things have in a society. It contains themes regarding underestimated heroes and the importance of storytelling. Reading it, you get the overwhelming sense that everything matters. Everything has its place and role. It feels like every single stone, every single dust mite even, has a history and a story behind it. And while that might mean that the book gets very dense and weighty at times, it's a masterful work. The idea itself is simple, a basic good conquering evil type story, but the way that it's executed is what makes this work stand out the way it does. The movie, on the other hand, is more character-oriented. It focuses on individuals and their stories and development as people. It focuses on the relationships between people and how unity, in spite of differences, is how good triumphs over evil. The ring turns you invisible because ultimately, evil works alone while good bands together. That's why it's so important not just for the characters to connect with each other, but for us to connect with them. We have to understand that these people had to overcome their prejudices and their natural mistrust of each other if they were going to triumph over evil. And the movies allowed us to do that better than the book does. So it's a tie? You know, maybe the haberdasher was right. maybe we can't do this without bias. Maybe it really does come down to personal preference, to which one we like better, but hasn't that always been the case? Analysis and reason certainly have their place, but in the end, it always comes down to which one we like better. And they might disagree with me, and the trolls might swoop down and try to bully me into changing my mind, but I like the movies better. Don't get me wrong, the book is a lot better than I thought it was going to be when I started reading it, and the story is absolutely brilliant. And the movies have flaws, I'm not going to try to say that they don't. But when I was reading the book, I felt like something was missing. I felt like the characters just weren't connecting with each other or with me, and I'm almost always going to prefer a story that has those connections. I'm impressed by the book's detail, but what I take away from the movies are things like the friendships that form between Legolas and Gimli, Frodo and Sam, Merry and Pippin, the relationships that we see between Gandalf and Pippin, between Elrond and Aragorn, and the way that people are continuously blown away by the actions of these four hobbits. Those things just strike me more deeply in the movies than they did in the book. In the end, my preference has little to do with length or excessive wordiness, but the fact that to me, the book was about a war, a ring, and a world, but the movies were about people. And we may have to agree to disagree, but I'll take the story about people. Now we're finished? Now we're finished. I'm glad you're with me, Hatter. Here at the end of all things. Had to say it, didn't you? Yep. So what do you think's gonna happen now? I don't know. But I know one thing. It's gonna be an incredible journey. Seriously? What? Did you seriously just say that? Well, I'm just saying it's gonna be an incredible journey now that we're homeward bound. Oh, come on! Oh, what? You get to go with your, I'm glad you're with me, Hatter. Here's the difference, Hatter. See, I was just making a few little references to the movie that we were, parroting. You've been making these lame jokes all